much for joining me here today at Re-Written Vintage Homestead. You know, everyone else has been giving their opinions on why they think egg prices are so high. I've done some investigating over this past week, and I would like to give you my thoughts on it as well. So let's go. The one mistake I've been seeing YouTube creators make when they're talking about this is just because you have backyard chickens, you're by no means an expert. And so I am by no means an expert. So I thought it was very important to get the history on the avian flu, also called the bird flu. So I'm going to have to read these facts off to you real quick, but it gives you a timeline of how things happened. So it's highly pathogenic. So that means it spreads from bird to bird to bird, okay? Typically, your laying birds, laying chickens, they get it terribly, where meat birds don't get it as bad. So in 1996 to 1997, the genetic name is H5N1. And that was first identified in domestic, that means pets, domestic waterfowl in China. And I want to come back to this. That was 96 and 97. From 2000 to 2004, H5N1 was not widely detected. However, in 2005, it was re-identified once again, where? In China, okay? Now, this virus mutates. It mutates, you know, just like any other viruses do. It changes, it adapts, it becomes stronger, it becomes weaker. And in 2014 to 2016, different genotypes of bird flu were identified in Asia, Africa, Europe, China. Those were H5N6 and H5N8. In 2021, a new type of H5N1 was developed and was predominantly in Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. In 2021, in the later part of 2021, Canada and North America birds showed evidence of the H5N1. And in 2022, outbreaks began occurring in North America in commercial poultry factories. So let's talk about these Chinese wet markets, you guys. So if you remember right, during COVID, that was the big lie we were all told, is that COVID came from Chinese wet markets. And we found out later that just wasn't true. It was created in a lab. But that doesn't diminish the filthiness of these wet markets. They're under no regulations like we are here in the United States. So basically, wet markets, a dry market is like grains and your box cereals and things like that. Your wet markets are live animals and vegetables and produce, okay? You can go into one of these wet markets and you could say, oh, I'm in the mood for duck, okay? You pick out your duck. Just like here in the United States, you can pick out your lobster, right? You can go there and pick out your duck. You can pick out your fish, your chicken, your dog, your cat, whatever you would like. Pick it out, and they will take that animal, take it back, and butcher it. And then it's fresh. That's what they consider fresh. After they chop up their vegetables, their meat, whatever it is, they take a hose and they rinse the floor where they were working. And that's where the word wet market comes in, because the floor is wet. Now, if you go and you watch some videos on wet markets, one thing I immediately noticed was the gentleman that was cutting a chicken had no gloves on, did not sanitize the area before he started cutting the chicken, wiped it with a wet rag when he was done cutting the chicken, and then took a head of cabbage and started chopping. So there was no disinfecting before, no disinfecting after, no protection against hand cross-contamination. They don't have to follow the same regulations we do. Some wet markets also sell exotic animals that is against the law. Some wet markets also, instead of selling ducks that have been raised by a producer, they're going out and getting ducks out on the pond, who knows where, that could be infected with this bird flu virus. They don't have to be tested the way we are here. All of our poultry is tested right in the factory. It's also tested before it's exported. So they don't have the same regulations we do. Animals there are kept in absolutely terrible, brutal conditions. There's no consideration for the animal. They're in very confined quarters. That is just a breeding ground for any kind of virus or sickness. They just spread it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I found it very interesting that that's where this took off. The bird flu came from China once again. And so until we start regulating these wet markets, now it's already been proven it had nothing to do with COVID, but we cannot take food from other places if they don't have the same type of regulation that we have in the United States. Can people get the bird flu? Yes, people can get the bird flu. Oftentimes, it ends up being a respiratory illness that you can get over. Unless you have an underlying health condition like I do, it could kill me or someone more elderly than me or a child. It can spread, and it has spread to cattle. The chances of it killing cattle is small. So I don't even know that they've recorded any deaths of cattle because cattle, they say, it comes out when it's cooked. So when it's cooked, the virus leaves the flesh and leaves the body of the cattle. But it doesn't do that with your egg producers, because by the time it's in them, it's spread to the other members that are in close quarters. So I really feel like this is something that needs to be addressed. I do believe it started in China, and I do believe it's real, and I do believe it's a problem. So you may be asking yourself, how does this bird flu, if it started in China, how did it get here? How did it get to Africa? How did it get to Canada? How does it get to these other countries? Well, they say it's spread through the air. It can be spread by one infected animal that's in the wild, migrating to another place and infects another bird. So it's highly contagious amongst bird species. So you may ask yourself then, well, how does it get into our commercial poultry operations? Because those are highly regulated. A lot of those animals even don't even see the light of day. They're always in buildings, small cages or whatever. How could they possibly get in touch with a migrating bird or a sick bird? Well, you know how you tell your kids to clean their room? And they may do this and they may do that, but they forgot to do this. And it was a very important step that you asked them to do, like pick up their dirty laundry. The same thing can happen in commercial growing facilities. So from what I read on those, of course, workers have, very, head to toe outfits that they have to wear, things to protect them from respiratory illnesses, gloves, boots that rinse off easily. They have some kind of liquid disinfectant that even car tires have to drive through first before it can go in to the operation, to make sure it doesn't pick up any bird droppings that might be hold the infection. But something can slip. Somebody can forget a step. Accidents happen. And from what I read, this has been so hard on people who work in this type of profession. So what do they do when they detect this, because like I said, they go into these factories now and they test these birds. They find one bird with this virus, they have to get rid of the entire operation because it's going to spread. And within 48 hours, they're usually dead anyway. Not always. That's not always the case, I believe, though. It's a very high percentage. 85 to 90% will die. They call this culling. And also from what I read, they put some type of foam into the building that is toxic, and it immediately suffocates the chickens. And then it's up to the workers to clean that out, and sometimes they incinerate them, sometimes they bury them, it just depends. But it's very hard on the workers mentally. It can also make them very sick. I did read there were several cases of people who have come down with it here in the United States that worked in those type of operations. So let's talk about those kind of operations as well. So just because our government regulates and sets rules and boundaries and things like that for our poultry producers, that doesn't make it any less horrific. If you've ever seen any videos on these operations, it'll make you sick. Also with dairy cows and animals that we use for meat, cattle, it's awful. Some of the conditions that they have to live under. The chickens especially, no room to move. Absolutely no room to move. So you can see how a disease will spread from one to one to one to one. You want to be careful. I know we all try to make great choices for the environment and for animals because we love them. There's different classifications for food, especially chicken eggs that you buy. So they can be free range. And by free range, you're going to automatically think, wow, they're outside all the time, just roaming around, happy as hell. Well, that's not true. Free range means they can even be in a building like I'm sitting in now, as long as they're not in a cage. They're allowed to walk around. Now, that's better than being in a cage, right? But it's by no means free ranging, okay? Then there's also cage free. And even cage free sounds great. You're like, oh, great. But it's much like free range. They're out. They're able to move about. I think they may have a certain amount of time per day that they need to have access to the outdoors and then come back in. I see local egg producers, small farmers like me, they'll say that their chickens are free range chickens. I don't free range my chickens, and let me tell you why. We have predators. You know, we have weasels, we have raccoons. I've showed you guys the raccoon situation. We have owls. We have all kinds of little creepy crawlies that crawl around here at night trying to get into that coop. And they get braver and braver, you know, as they come out in the day. We have hawks flying all over. And I do not want to take a chance on my girls. So we don't free range. Therefore, I categorize my girls as pasture raised. And so what that means is that they're allowed an open pasture for most of the day. So when I'm outside, my husband's outside, the dogs are outside, my girls come outside, and they're usually outside for 4 to 5 hours a day. And if you drive by the old homestead, you'll see them out there. But then when it starts getting dusk, they're put up for the night. I don't want anything to get to them. They rise and shine every morning between 6 and 6:30, and that's when we go out and we open up their little coop. And they have a huge run that they come out and they play in until I let them out when they can be supervised. So they're out quite a bit in the day, but by no means are they wandering the countryside all day long. So keep these things in mind when you're trying to make great choices on your eggs. Don't be deceived. So this is a sad situation for so many reasons. It's sad for all of the chickens that have had to been killed because this virus was detected. It's sad for the American public because eggs are an inexpensive source of protein that many low-income families really rely on, even middle-income families really rely on, but it especially hits the low-income hard. And, you know, that's really sad. It's sad for farmers that have made this their career because many of them have lost their whole operations. Now, President Trump has set aside $100 million to reimburse the poultry farmers for every chicken that they've had to cull. They get reimbursed for that chicken, so that's helpful. But if they want to get back into operation, you guys, I know this firsthand because I couldn't wait to see my first egg. It takes anywhere from 5 to 7 months before those baby chicks start laying those eggs. And even when they do, they're just little bitty until they get a little bigger. So you can see why prices are high. I do believe a lot of it has to do with things that are out of our control here in the United States as far as the virus. But I imagine there's also some price gouging going on as well. So another thing you might have asked yourself, just like I did, isn't there anything else they can do besides culling these chickens? What about immunizations? Well, they do immunize their chickens in France, but it's not been approved here in the United States yet. Thank God, because I am in no hurry to put any kind of additional chemicals in our poultry, and I doubt that you are either. I would rather it go through rigorous testing before it's approved here. But I really think the alternative to culling is to get rid of these huge chicken factories. And you know how every Christmas we see something from the ASPCA saying, please don't buy puppies or kittens for your children as Christmas presents, because chances are their interest in them are gonna, as time goes on, they're not toys, you know, they're animals. And it takes a responsible person and children to bring a pet into their family. And it takes a lot of investigating and a lot of preparation. It isn't something you should just do spur of the moment. And that's the same thing with chickens. Just because the price of eggs is sky high right now, here in my area in the Midwest, they're $6.99 a dozen. That's a lot. That is a lot. Considering maybe a year and a half ago, they were maybe $2.50, $2.30. So they have really risen in price, but that's no reason for anyone to run out and go get chickens. I investigated chickens and chicken raising for 2 years at least before we got our chickens. We wanted to make sure that we could get a very nice coop that would keep them safe, a very nice run that would protect them from the weather elements, that they would have room to move, that we had a place for them to roam in the daytime, and that we were doing everything we could to keep them safe because they're part of our family. And like any other pet, you guys, chickens are a lot of work. Their coop is nasty, and you have to keep that clean. You have to keep that hay rotated. You know, you have to keep the vents clean and open so that the air circulates in there. You have to get up early in the morning to let them out and run out there when it's dusk to put them in when they go to bed. Make sure they have fresh water and feed every day. You want to give them supplements in their water like we do so that they stay healthy and disease-free. It builds up their immune system. So don't jump into anything without doing a lot of investigating first. So you may be asking them, where in the heck do you suggest I get eggs? Well, I suggest you get them from your small, local farmers like me. But you guys, you also want to be cautious. check out the coop. I mean, drive by and look how these chickens are being raised. Are they being raised humanely? Does it look like they have room to move? Does it look like their coops are being cleaned? Do you see that person giving them fresh water? Are they being attended to? Do you ever see them exercising? You want to be just as cautious with that as you are with the eggs that you're buying in the store. Because I have seen tons of chickens being raised in my local area where the people have no business owning a chicken, okay? You cannot put the chicken coop out in the middle of the yard where there's no shade. They're going to fry. They can't take the heat. They have to have a way to cool off and a way to warm up. So, look at those things. Try to be real responsible with who you're buying things from as well. And yeah. So the moral of this story is I do think this is something that started in China. I do think it's something that got out of control and now it's kind of out of our control. I do think it's a very sad situation. I don't necessarily think it's the government's fault that the price of eggs is so high. I think there is some price gouging going on, and I also think egg producers are trying to get back on their feet. But boy, this would be a great time to change some things about how chickens are raised commercially, I think. And remember to support your local small farmer. They're working their butts off to bring you healthy, good food from animals that are treated humanely. Thanks for watching, guys. Come back and see me. I want to thank the Grub Terra Company for sending me a sample of their black soldier fly larvae for the girls to try out. They absolutely loved it. And I also read about the company, and I am very excited to be letting them sponsor with me. So let me tell you about them. They strive to provide high quality and healthy products for your flock. Their dried black soldier fly larvae is a perfect feed additive for the flock to keep them healthy and happy all year around. It's a great source of protein, and it's also environmentally friendly. All of their partner farms feed their black soldier fly larvae pre-consumer food waste from supermarkets. Uh-oh, somebody just laid an egg, see? Every 1 pound of Grub Terra's dried black soldier fly larvae equals 20 pounds of food waste saved from the landfills. So give them a try, everybody. It's a great source of protein for your flock. They'll love it, and you're helping the environment. Well, I got a little girl laying right here. And I have found they all like to lay at the same, look at that. She's laying on 3. They all like to lay on the same spot. But it looks like I have 1, 2 over here. So we'll let her finish her business. And then we'll come back and grab those. There might even be more than that under her. Yep, it looks like 4 at least. That's Penny. Penny. Holy cow, look how many she was sitting on. 3, 6, 8. 8 eggs today. Good girl.